start on the Plains. That's where Mississippi State was this weekend, and Bulldogs lose. It was I was trying to decide how to get into I didn't want to just pile adulation on Auburn. That didn't seem like the right way to begin the conversation. So just very matter of fact.
The announcers, gosh, I know that they have to do this. I know they do, but I was cracking up, man, with the oh, wow, we haven't seen Auburn's offense click like this in weeks. Oh, where has this Auburn offense been? Wow, Hugh Freeze has really made some adjustments. It's like, guys, it's because they haven't played a defense like this in weeks.
So, hey, that opening drive of the game, Auburn jumps out to a lead with a 8-play, 75-yard drive, touchdown pass to start it, 7-0. State completed its first pass. It was a throw down the field. Really nice catch by Xavier Thomas. Drive finishes with a field goal. But that would be all the scoring for Mississippi State in the first half. Auburn got a 45-yard touchdown pass from Peyton Thorne to Javarius Johnson. And then they kicked a 39-yard field goal, and then Jeremiah Cobb, with 9 seconds to go in the half, ran it in. So there were defensive issues, clearly, for Mississippi State. But the defense for State got put into some bad positions by, let's just call it what it was, really poor play at the quarterback position from Mike Wright, especially as it pertained to when he was supposed to give the ball and when he was supposed to pull it. He just made some really bad decisions that gave Auburn more opportunities than they should have, and just led to really poor execution by Mississippi State in the first half.
I mean, it was a total systemic failure. Offense, defense, nothing went Mississippi State's way. As Borky made the comment that the announcers were saying, I don't know where this Auburn offense has been. Well, it's been waiting to see Mississippi State, which is the worst defense in the conference. The main takeaway I had from this game on Saturday, by the way, is that Arkansas should just go ahead and fire Sam Pittman. Because if that's how your offense plays against this defense, just get out. You don't deserve to be coaching football anymore. Offensively, though, you're right. I thought. I think because State is so limited offensively that Barbay can never really get into a rhythm calling plays. They put themselves behind the chains too often through their own mistakes or through penalties. But then when they do get a play off and they have a chance to make a big play, they overthrow it, they underthrow it, they miss a receiver, they miss a block. Like you said, Wright makes a bad decision. I mean, it's just it just went poorly for Mississippi State from start to finish. And now this team is looking like one that will not finish the season very strong at all.
I will give credit and shame at the exact same time. I think there are two guys that have the ability to change the game with the ball in their hands. Xavier Thomas is one of them. He had 9 catches for 112 yards. That was great. That's fantastic. Tulu Griffin, though, touched the ball twice in the running game, and he had 3 catches. 5 touches is not enough for him. It's not enough for him. So let's kind of do this in 2 parts. Let's talk about Mississippi State's defense first, and then we'll talk about the offense. Obviously, concerns about the defense. They give up over 400 yards to an offense that had been non-existent for much of the season. Jarquez Hunter in the backfield was bumping and grinding all over the field for Auburn. He hasn't had that much action since Instagram this summer. 17 carries, 144 yards. I thought I'd at least get a giggle. All you did was take the headphones off and...
Oh, God.
Borky didn't even chuckle. 186 yards rushing for Auburn net. Peyton Thorne, 20 of 26 for 230 yards and 3 touchdowns.
I mean,
that may be the problem right there.
At no point this season, absent the Samford game, did Peyton Thorne look like he was comfortable throwing the football at all. I mean, and he can't help it. It's his face, but his face even looks like he's scared on the field. And to have a guy that has struggled so much with consistent passing of the football. And a group of wide receivers that would anybody in the SEC trade for? I mean, even Vanderbilt's got a dude that's going to play in the NFL. And he put up that efficiency and those numbers despite that. It's a stunning indictment on Mississippi State's defense.
Peyton Thorne has thrown for over 200 yards twice this season. He threw for 282 against Samford, and he goes for 230 against Mississippi State. The other games, 141 against UMass, 94 against Cal, 44 against A&M, 82 against Georgia, 102 against LSU, and an even 100 against Ole Miss.
Opposing quarterbacks are completing 73% of their passes against Mississippi State. So Devin Leary and Max Johnson and whoever USM wants to throw out there, and God help us, Jackson Dart. Can't wait to see what happens there.
What was different about State's defense in the second half? Because they only gave up 3 points in the second half after kind of getting shredded in the first half. Did Auburn play a different style in the second half?
I think Auburn slowed down a good bit and just because I think they knew State wasn't going to get 27 points.
So, Hugh, now, I liked and I didn't like what he had to say about that because he was asked about that, the conservatism in the second half, and he said, well, one, you realize we had one possession in the third quarter, right? I mean, and what happened on that possession? Got points. And then he went down their fourth quarter possessions where the field position was really bad. They had a first down completed that was called back on a holding. And basically he was like, you guys want to come to the whiteboard and tell me how we were conservative? But he kept saying I was conservative. I completed a pass. I punted. And then we had a penalty. That cracked me up. The good things were him anyway. But he would tell you that Auburn didn't slow down. It's just the game got weird with one third quarter possession and then weird field position in the fourth. When you're up 3 scores, you don't have to just let it fly anymore.
What about offensively?
Well, I mean, you see why Will Rogers was the starting quarterback now. I mean, say what you want about Mike Wright and what he can do on the ground. He can't move the ball through the air. I feel like when he does complete a pass, it's almost as much luck as anything else. He's just not an accurate passer. I feel like State had some play calling issues in terms of, I mean, like the 4th and short. I don't like a read option there. Just hand the ball off, or better yet, get under center and sneak it. But that's a bad call. I thought State. Sometimes they tried to be a little too fancy, but then again, like we said earlier, there were times where they had the right play call dialed up and they just didn't execute it. So, I mean, this is just a bad offensive football team right now. I mean, I say right now, I don't see it getting any better. Marks being out obviously hurt a ton, but at the same time, we talked all this offseason about State having depth in the running back room with Kevon Lee, who transferred in and has really done nothing. State's transfer portal, by the way, what a train wreck. Not a single true contributor from anybody in the transfer portal this past offseason. I mean, that goes a long way as to why. I mean, what does that say? What does that say? If that's the biggest contributor you've got out of the transfer portal, that's not good. It's just a bad football team. And when you watch this team this weekend, there's no way that's the only conclusion you can come away with. That, they should be able to beat Southern Mississippi in a couple of weeks. But beyond that, I mean, they're an underdog this week. They'll be an underdog at A&M. They'll be a double-digit underdog to Ole Miss when the Egg Bowl rolls around. And then you'll have to make a decision there at the end of the season. And I think the decision is kind of sort of showing itself in the way that if you watch that game and you watch Zach Arnett, I mean, it was depressing. He's just standing there on the sideline, arms folded. He's not really talking to anybody. He's got his microphone up on his headset most of the time, so he's not conversating with anybody. Players come off the field. He's not really saying anything to them. He's not really talking to his assistants. He's just kind of standing there watching the game. And I know Zach Arnett, and I watched him coach the previous 3 seasons, and that's not Zach Arnett. That is not him out there. And I feel his discomfort right now.
Let me ask you this: you've been beating this drum for a while, hey Dad, that Zach Arnett does not look like the Zach Arnett that you know, that you've watched in previous years. Do you think somebody got to him and said, "Hey, you're a head coach now. This is how you have to be a head coach"?
Yes. I think that's been ongoing. I think if you look back at early in the season, when people asked him about injuries, he would tell you. He would tell you what the injury is. Like, he's out. He's not going to play this week. And now it's turned into, well, we'll evaluate them day to day. And somebody said, hey, you're giving away too much information. Nobody's just letting the man be himself, I feel like. And I don't know who that is, but they've done Zach Arnett a huge disservice, in my opinion.
Does he have the aha moment where he wakes up or is sleeping, can't sleep in the middle of the night, and is lying there staring at the ceiling and goes, you know what? I'm a head coach in the SEC. If this works out, great. If it doesn't work out, it's going to not work out with me doing it my way. Does that happen? That needs to happen. I don't know if it's going to. There's only 4 weeks left in the season. But it needed. In any situation, you got to be yourself. Yourself is what got you to the dance. He didn't get to where he is by acting the way he does now. That's not the Zach Arnett we've seen in the past. So I don't know what the thought process was, but, not that he was successful at Mississippi State, but Joe Moorhead always said, I have 51% of the vote. What's somebody going to say to him? Somebody's telling him, I think you should do this. What's somebody going to do if he says, well, no, I'm not going to do that? What are they going to do? Physically? Mentally? They're going to fire him? No. So
you think he's
just
getting
be yourself,
pulled in a lot of directions by people around, and he is allowing them to pull him in those directions, basically?
That's what it feels like. Because and that's the only evidence I have is I've seen Zach Arnett coach. I've talked to Zach Arnett. I've interviewed him. And the guy that we see at these press conferences, the guy that I'm seeing on the sidelines is not the same guy that I saw last year. It's not.
C-Spire text line 601-879-4395. George, I think a little harsh here. He says, I really can't figure it out. The coaching staff has had a year to get their team ready for football this year. Have they done anything to get the team ready? Is Mississippi State the new Vanderbilt?
Vanderbilt's still Vanderbilt first.
Mississippi State is not the new Vanderbilt.
But this is a very – is tumultuous the right word? Because, as Haydad pointed out, they didn't really – lean on the portal heavily anyway, and those evaluations didn't work out. And the recruiting class right now, and I know, you can develop and stuff and diamonds in the rough, is awful for an SEC West team.
It's not good.
At the moment.
It's not good. Yeah.
And so you've got this cycle now in this new era of college football where you're going to lose a bunch of players off this roster, and you have to acquire talent somehow, whether it be in recruiting or via transfer portal. You know what that takes now? Money. But if I'm a big booster of Mississippi State, I'm not giving you my money right now. The product is awful. The team should be better than this. I'll give my money to a new guy. And so then the current guy can't dip into the portal and retool his roster because he didn't have the money. And it's this cycle that is being created in this new era of don't have enough money to retool the roster. And so the coach's hands are going to be tied in roster building. But that's going to lead to losses. It's kind of a mess in this new era when you're in a purgatory situation like this.
And hey, Dad, we've talked a lot about strategy, and we'll have to pick this, kind of directing a question to Hey, Dad. We're talking, a lot during the summer, and really even going back to last spring, about NIL strategy and the way you build roster and how you use the resources that you've got to the best of your ability and all of those things. And a lot of Mississippi State's early focus was on keeping the players that were on the roster. And I don't know if rewarding is the right way to describe it, but, choose the word you want. Retaining, maybe that's the way to describe it. and then high school kids, transfer portal, whatever. I don't know. Does there have to be a different strategy, hey, Dad? But because you talked about no impact players through the transfer portal. Does that mean you're not getting the right guys? Not choosing to pay the guys that you need to pay? What does it mean?
Well, it's a little of both. They obviously missed on some guys. A guy like Rylan Godey coming into the transfer portal has given State really nothing this year. You're 8 games in, he doesn't have a catch. I don't know that he's been targeted, to be totally honest with you. And then what he gives you in the running game, he has not been a great blocker as well. Jaquarius Spivey, the NCAA has taken him off of your hands. Jacoby Albert's a guy I think they were counting on to play this year, but he got injured in fall camp and has been out for the season. So you got some guys like that, but then you have some other guys who they just haven't done anything. You know, Kamari Rogers, Radar Jones, Chris Keys, these are guys they brought in to compete in the secondary. And even going back a year, you know, Jordan Morant and Hunter Washington haven't been great for Mississippi State either. This upcoming signing class, you know, you don't have as much opportunity to retain guys because so many of these guys are they're just out of eligibility. Now, Will Rogers could come back, but I don't think that he will. But Buki Watson, Jet Johnson, Pickering, Jade Crummy, it's time for them. They're going to be moving on at this point. You know, from a retention standpoint, I think State would probably be most focused on Xavier Thomas. And then if Tulu Griffin decides to come back for another year, which I would be surprised by that. I think the NFL is a place he can go. I think he can get drafted. I don't know if he's got enough on tape. I feel like when you finally see him in the NFL and somebody puts the ball in his hands, if he goes to a place like Miami or something, where Mississippi State fans are going to be looking at themselves going, what did we have that we didn't use? Because I know he's a talented football player. So I do think that this year, when you talk about NIL and the portal, it's going to be more about getting guys into Mississippi State because you need impact guys this year.
If Tulu Griffin doesn't go the draft route, if he's not getting the feedback that he believes gets him a good enough draft grade to be a top 3-round draft pick, does he leave to go somewhere where they're going to use him and get the ball to him so that he can build a resume?
And that's the right question because it's going to be. I'm going to make an assumption here that there's a change. Make that assumption. It's going to be on the new coach to sell Tulu Griffin on the idea that what we're going to do offensively is going to be built around you and Xavier Thomas because those are the two best playmakers State has.
Yes,
those are the two guys that State. That's the two guys that you need to build your offense around. So. That'll be the sell job. Otherwise, yeah, he would move on.
Well, and there's also a financial sell job. A guy like him in the SEC would get a lot of money at a lot of places to go play. I mean that's reality. If you think that he's not going to get tampered with or without a coaching change, doesn't matter. I would. My guess would be it's already happening. If not, kudos to him for being able to block all that out because I bet there are a bunch of staffs around the country and in this conference that want to talk to him and say, hey, we got money for you and a bunch of targets, a lot more than what you're currently getting. So that's something that they're going to have to fight too. That's the thing in this new era, and I know why people don't like it, but, I mean, you've got to renegotiate contracts at the end of every season. You're good players. Ole Miss has them, Alabama has them, A&M has them, everybody has them. That at the end of the season, they like where they are, they're good players, they're happy in your offense, they're happy at your school, but you're going to have to, not you, the collective, is going to have to sit down with them and renegotiate a contract. It's just like the NFL, but it's an annual thing as opposed to a 4 or 5 year thing.
But I want to go back to what Hey Dad said a second ago. And Hey Dad, I'm not the smartest football guy. We all watch it. We all like it. But you don't have to be a rocket surgeon to see that Tulu Griffin and Xavier Thomas are the two best playmakers. And that's not new. It's not new. It's like you look at this thing, you're like, why for 2 years running? I mean, a year ago, they weren't even on the field when they needed to be on the field. This year, at least they're on the field. Get them the freaking football. And they did that with Thomas some. Right, he had 9 catches for 112 yards. Go figure.
Yeah.
Paul and Brandon, what's a rocket surgeon? Come on, man. Yes, I said rocket surgeon. Come on, guys. Come on.
I knew what you meant.
Tell me I'm not crazy, though.
No, you're not crazy. The team should be built around those two.
You cover Mississippi State, but you are also a Mississippi State fan. Do you not bang your head against the wall going, give those guys the ball? All right. 4 o'clock hour coming up. Sports Talk Mississippi. And one last thing for me. I know I've been beating this drum. I've been beating this drum for 2 years. And I feel like everything we do ultimately comes down to a comparison between Ole Miss and Mississippi State. I'm not trying to do that here. I'm just trying to compare similar players. And when I think about Tulu Griffin, if I am an opposing defensive coordinator and he is used properly, he keeps me awake at night because I know every time he touches the ball, he's got a chance to take it to the house. I've seen it. You've seen it. So, do you know the player that I'm going to compare him to? Recent Ole Miss player.
Oh, McCluster?
No. But far more recent than that. Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
Is that a reasonable comparison?
I think Elijah Moore is a little bit more skilled as a receiver than is Tulu Griffin.
Okay.
I think Tulu Griffin's more of a jack-of-all-trades kind of guy. I compare Tulu to Dexter McCluster a lot. I said a couple years ago that when they had him out of that outside receiver position and they wasn't getting on the field, that maybe they should consider moving him to the backfield just to make sure he gets touches. I think he could do that, but
so
he's just more, just a little bit more explosive. I mean, I thought Elijah Moore he would catch the deep ball. But was Elijah Moore as much like catch the short pass and take it 60, 70 yards as Tulu Griffin can be if used properly?
It was kind of all of the above. With Moore, it was kind of all of the above. I mean, they would line him up in the backfield. They'd move him into the slot. They'd move him to the outside, drag routes across the middle. He took some big shots. You're right in that he turned into a really good route runner. He became a precise route runner to go along with his quickness and his speed, and that was a great differentiator. But the bottom line is he was the guy that Lane Kiffin believed had the ability to beat defenses. And so it was, how do we scheme balls into his hand? 2020, in 8 games, Elijah Moore had 100 touches. He carried the ball 14 times and had 86 receptions. So 100 touches in 8 games. That's an average of what, like 11 and a half per game, I think? No, 12 a game. 12 point something per game.
12 point, like 1 or 2, yeah.
Yeah. So 12 touches a game.
Yeah.
Tulu Griffin this year, actually, let's go back a year. So in Mike Leach's offense a year ago, Tulu Griffin did not carry the ball a single time. And we're talking offensive possession. Special teams a little bit different. I mean, I wasn't counting Elijah Moore's special teams touches. And so a year ago, he had 40 catches. In what world does it make sense for Rufus Harvey, Woody Marks, Dylan Johnson, Caleb Ducking, and Ra Thomas to all have more catches than Tulu Griffin? Would be my argument. 40 catches in 13 games a year ago. And
I mean, Rufus Harvey, I liked Rufus, but if Tulu Griffin is in the slot and you give him 50 catches, you probably get a lot more than the 10 yards a catch that Rufus Harvey gave you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he averaged 3 touches a game last year. Yeah. This year, that number has basically doubled. He's got 13 carries and 35 catches. So that's 48 in 8 games. So he's averaging 6 touches offensively per game. It's not enough. And but what I'm getting at is, why is it that you see that, and I see that, and Borky sees that, and most State fans see that, but the guys who are being paid either hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to coach this team don't see it. Why? Like, I cannot wrap my mind around it. Well, it's not really within the scheme. Well, that's stupid. You need to come up with another scheme if it doesn't involve getting your best player the ball more times.
Especially when that was the hallmark of what we were told about this offense prior to the start of the season. And now, right now, like, getting the ball into playmakers' hands is kind of the defense that stops any offense for me. It's just something that they made up and said. So, for me, though, what I think people might try to counter is like, well, there's probably some plays they've drawn up where Rodgers took a sack or couldn't make it. You got to make it simpler. You got to find easier ways to get the ball. I mean, there's not enough quick passes to Tulu Griffin, quick screens. Set something up and just get him the ball at the line of scrimmage and let him make a man miss, which he can do. So, yeah, I mean, if I could get Tulu Griffin 10, 12 touches a game, and if I could get Xavier Thomas another 8, 10 touches a game, I feel like I'm going to have some total offense there.
I know it's a different thing, kind of apples to oranges, but did you see how the Saints used Alvin Kamara yesterday? The air yards on his receptions are basically nothing. Yeah. It's short little, and I know he's a running back,
but
still,
dump it off and let him go.
Short little stuff. Just get him the ball in space, and he will go to work. And it worked for them yesterday.
I actually didn't see it because the local games were not the Saints. So,
yeah, shout out to the local Fox affiliate for airing the Cowboys, yesterday.
And my local CBS affiliate aired the Falcons and Titans. So I had nothing.
There you go.